Did you know that building healthy soil is the key to successfully growing your own food? Check out my new free video series where you will learn everything you need to know about building thick, rich soil, including the 5 essential components that make it up, how to create your own lasagna garden and why you would want to, and as an added bonus, a video on creating an almost instant garden for under $100. Plus, you'll get a healthy dose of my goofiness. Go to healthysoilhacked.com now to sign up for your free video series. Your plants will thank you. Remember, that's healthysoilhacked.com.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Jacq Davis of Epic Yard Farm to talk about her experience with creating an edible food forest in Tempe, Arizona. Jacq was born in Taipei, Taiwan, grew up in Taichung, moved to Singapore for high school, then moved to Ohio to study at Columbus College of Art and Design in 1997. She became a U.S. citizen in 2011. After living in Texas for a few years, Jacq and her husband sold their home, moved into a 35-foot fifth-wheel RV, and traveled and worked full-time in the RV for 4 years. Now, that sounds like an interesting story. Jacq runs her own graphic design business, Jacq Design, from her home office in Tempe, Arizona. She was first introduced to permaculture through the Valley Permaculture Alliance in 2012. Now she is in the progress of establishing a semi-self-sustaining food forest in her backyard in Tempe, Arizona. She hopes to inspire others to do the same by giving tours, trading seeds, harvests, and plants with visitors. Welcome to the show today, Jacq.
Hello, Greg. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being here. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to where you're at now, and maybe include something about that RV trip for 4 years?
When we were living in Texas, we actually realized that we only stay in our home about 70% of the time during the year. And we were constantly out traveling and exploring different parts of the states. And we just had an idea of, we don't really need what they call a stick home, and just kind of move everything. We sold everything and moved into the RV. We didn't even have a storage. And with our work, we can work pretty much everywhere. The technology, like Skype and GoToMeeting and stuff like that allow us to provide service to our customers wherever we are.
Fantastic. So you're kind of traveling, you land in Tempe. How did you get to a place of deciding, oh my gosh, I want to grow food in my yard?
When we purchased the home, it was a decision we had to make, was whether we need to buy a lawnmower. And we were discussing that and decided we don't want to waste water on grass that we can't eat. And we should just use the water for growing things that is edible and looks beautiful. So we decided to start our food forest project.
Oh, very good. So food forest, tell me, first of all, how did you come to this notion of food forest, and what is a food forest?
So to us, one of the first things we researched growing edibles was because of Valley Permaculture Alliance. And I was introduced to the idea of permaculture, and through a lot of the terminology and the concepts, the food forest was something that really resonated with me. To have a garden that almost feel like you're out in nature, that idea is really, really good to me. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
So what is a food forest?
A food forest is where you can forage food that you grow. It basically is a self-sustaining ecosystem that's in balance. You don't have to worry about it too much. It's self-sustaining.
So,
just like out in nature.
yeah. So say more about that. When you say self-sustaining, what does that mean?
To me, it means I have very minimal input, so I do not use fertilizer, non-chemical, not even organic. I don't apply pesticides, and all the input I give was providing organic matter through
Mm-hmm.
wood chips and compost, and then give water when the plants need it,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is just letting nature take care of itself and try to work with it instead of forcing it to do what I want them to do.
Mm-hmm. So let's go on a journey here. I want to talk about your backyard. We'll get to your front yard here in a minute. But if we were to walk out on your back porch, give me a picture of what your backyard looks like. What's growing out there? Maybe what you can harvest right now.
So the backyard is actually the latest project we just completed.
Mm-hmm.
When you step out from our kitchen door, you basically go into our kitchen garden. And right now,
Oh.
we have a lot of winter vegetables still exploding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of preventing me from planting my summer crop. So we have broccoli, Brussels sprouts. We recently planted some tomatoes. We also added a spaliered apple tree
Oh, nice.
among them because it's kind of low bearing. So it will allow us to look out from our kitchen door into the garden and be able to see further out, deeper into the garden.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the word espaliered.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
That is fruit trees that's trained into kind of a spread out structure.
Kind of flat, like against a wall, maybe?
Exactly, but this one is special because the fruit tree supplier had already trained it that way.
Ah.
So I had it actually standing on its own in the middle of the kitchen garden, and its purpose it will serve the purpose of shading one of my metal planters.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're keeping it pretty small.
Oh, very good. Okay, cool. So and in permaculture, you mentioned the word permaculture. Let's kind of talk that through for a moment. Have you done a permaculture design course?
I have not taken any permaculture design course, but I did take a lot of classes at the Valley Permaculture Alliance.
Perfect. So can you kind of give us your definition of what permaculture is?
To me, permaculture is work with nature. You observe what nature does, and you try to mimic nature in your garden. So no straight rows of the same crop. You mix things up, and a lot of polyculture. You kind of do mixed cropping, companion planting, and you grow things that will encourage beneficial insects to come into your yard.
Mm-hmm. In permaculture, we talk about zones, and you mentioned zone 1 here a moment ago. Is your kitchen garden. I think you said your kitchen garden is zone 1, right out your back door, right outside your kitchen. Can you tell us why you did that?
Because that is the most active area of my garden. It's the closest to where I need the food source. So the kitchen garden is literally 8 feet away from my kitchen sink.
Isn't that nice?
So it's nice to just walk outside and pick the vegetables you want for dinner or lunch, and just you have that vitality right from the garden onto your plate, and everything just tastes so much fresher and more flavorful.
Yeah.
So zone 1, we definitely grow things that we try to use almost every day.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, good. So that is how much of your backyard?
That is actually about 1/10 of our backyard.
Great.
We have zone 2, kind of a lot of perennials, herbs, smaller bush and fruit trees. And then we also have a zone 3, That is the furthest out. And there we have some clumping bamboo that will grow for timber.
Uh-huh.
And eventually they'll produce bamboo shoot for us, also for edible.
Oh.
We also have sugarcane, banana. Much of the larger fruit trees are in zone 3, so they're the furthest, most edge of our property.
Mm-hmm. So what kinds of things are, so you mentioned a few things. What else are you growing in your backyard?
So in the backyard, we have 6 peach trees, 2 cherry trees, 2 persimmon trees, 1 jujube, a bunch of sugarcane, different varieties of sugarcane, passion fruit vine, moringa tree, lychee, Barbados cherry, papaya. We also have a little pond. We have that is in our zone 2 actually. We have a fish pond that has koi and goldfish. And when we do water change, we'll actually use that water to water our plants because there's nitrogen in there.
Fantastic. From the fish poop. We can say poop on the show. Fantastic. So that's your backyard. And we recently were at Jake Mace's, and he's right around the corner from you. And on that day, you had a pile of wood chips in your front yard that you were trying to get us to have people come and pick up because you had taken as many as you could take. So you kind of subscribed to the put wood chips down idea as well, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us more about that and why you do that?
So the reason I started using the wood chips is I have watched this documentary called Back to Eden. And the farmer that's featured in that film, he used the wood chip method, and it basically is encouraging people to use the sheet mulching, the lasagna gardening method to grow. And that really just made a huge difference in our garden. So the 3 years we've been gardening, we have taken 3 big truckloads of wood chips.
What happens at the interface between the dirt and the wood chips? So you're basically putting the wood chips on top as a mulch, right?
Yes. So where it's bare dirt and there was no grass before, we will put a thin layer of compost and then a thick layer of wood chip on top. In our front yard area, we actually did the sheet mulching because there's a grass lawn there, and we had put down very thick layer of cardboard and newspaper, then some compost and wood chips. Oh,
wow. Cool. And how is so in your front yard, how is that working with the because we have Bermuda grass here in the valley for anybody that doesn't know. And so you're covering Bermuda grass up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How's that working?
The side we used cardboard and newspaper exclusively worked perfect. There was no grow back of grass. But the one small section that we ran out of cardboard, we went and purchased very heavy duty landscaping fabric that's supposed to be a weed barrier. And Bermuda grass just laughed at it and poked right through. And now it's matted up because it's woven itself. The Bermuda grass has woven itself into a landscaping fabric. So we have to redo that side, but I show people when they come how big of a difference between using cardboard and landscaping fabric is.
Nice. Fantastic. So let's shift a little bit. I want to talk about how you decide or go about choosing the types of edibles to grow in your garden.
I start with things I miss the most from my homeland. Growing up in the tropics, we have year-round of delicious, wide variety of fruit and vegetables. So I start with that, and then I cross-reference on things that can be grown here. A majority of my trees are tropical-based. I'm also learning now this year to grow deciduous fruit trees.
Oh, yes. Something we do a lot here in Phoenix.
Yes, and I have a lot of help from the permaculture group and from the Facebook gardening groups who have been growing deciduous trees.
Uh-huh.
So
Fantastic.
that is a new adventure for me.
Nice. And so when you say deciduous, you mentioned peaches early. Peaches are deciduous. Deciduous trees are any kind of trees that lose their leaves in the winter. They go dormant.
Yes.
So what's your favorite plants that you're currently growing in your garden?
Currently, my favorite tree that's growing is the moringa trees. I have
Oh.
5 of them on my property, and they're all 2.5 years old, grown from seed in the ground.
Wow.
And all of them they reach about 20 to 25 feet tall in the summertime. And I'll cut them down to about 6 feet tall to the stump right as we go into spring, after the freeze damage is not going to happen. So, but by August, they go right back up to 25
feet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So why? What are moringas for? Tell us about them.
So moringa is super high in nutrients, very, very nutritious tree that you can use the leaves, you can use the flowers, you can eat the bean pods. Almost the whole plant can be eaten, and it has medicinal purpose. And it also thrives in our summer heat and our summer sun. So I actually have learned to use it also as a nursing tree for a lot of more delicate plants that can't take the summer heat.
So talk to me about that. What do you mean a nursing tree?
So a nursing tree is to help smaller and more delicate plants to handle our intense sunlight. Also, it prevents the strong winds from damaging the smaller, more delicate plant.
So you're growing underneath the moringa trees. Very good.
Yes, it's kind of part of our guild. We have multiple guilds that we follow through the permaculture method.
Oh, perfect. So I have to know, you mentioned the word guilds. Can you kind of tell me what a guild is?
So guild is beneficial grouping of plants and animals. You basically have different groupings of plants that will take care of each other. An example is you have a upper story like the tall fruit trees or tall shade trees.
Like your moringas.
Yes, exactly, like the moringas. And the moringa is great for that because it actually is not too dense, so it lets quite a bit of light through the dappled shade. And then you can grow berry bushes, different type of shorter fruit trees underneath that. And one example we have is actually the chiltepine peppers. That's native to this area.
Right.
And the pepper is just absolutely delicious. They love being under the moringa tree.
Oh, very good.
And then we also have understory plants and ground cover. So one of the ground covers we grow a lot is the sweet potato vine.
Oh, yes.
And we use it as a green mulch during summertime. It spreads out. It keeps the ground cool. It also keeps the moisture in. And from Asia, that's one thing that I also remember growing up in Taiwan is my grandma will go out and harvest sweet potato leaves.
Oh, yes.
And that's what we eat through the summer. So that is a good food crop to also have in the summertime.
Oh, yeah, of course. Absolutely. Fantastic. That was an excellent definition of guilds. Good job.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, we always ask our guests for questions, and this is a question that you sent over, and I have to ask it. Does your husband have any influence in the decisions and successes of your gardening?
Yes, he has a huge influence.
Yeah, tell me about that.
One of the first things when we were trying to decide how to grow, his only requirement to me was do not make our garden look like a farm.
Oh.
So don't grow anything in straight rows.
Right.
He even was a little bit opposing on setting up shade structures just so we don't have we want to keep it look beautiful and it look more like a landscape. So when people come to our garden, if they don't know what edibles they're looking at, it would just look like exotic,
Oh,
cool
yes.
looking plants
Right.
because they're just scattered all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
What's really fun about it is now when you walk through our garden, it's almost like you're foraging in the food forest, like an actual forest, because
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, look, there's strawberry over here.
Uh-huh.
And then you walk a few paces over, you got blueberries, you got chiltepin,
Oh.
you got, guava. So it's just little bits and pieces of different type
Uh-huh.
of edibles, and
Yeah.
you're just constantly discovering them as you walk through the garden. So it's not like a clear view of rows and rows of
Mm-hmm.
the same plant.
Nice. You mentioned blueberries, and they're
Mhm.
kind of particular in growing them in the desert. You've planted them and gotten blueberries?
Yes, I have, and I'm actually in the middle of a trial with my blueberries. I do a lot of trial and error in my garden,
Yeah.
and what I've read about blueberries is that they like to grow in very high organic matter,
Mm-hmm.
lots of microbial activities
Yep.
that I think from what I was reading is those microbes communicate with plants and then
Mm-hmm.
they'll adjust the pH for the plants.
Isn't that nice?
Yes, it's just there's such an intelligent system already built in nature,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to test it out. So our front yards soil is almost just like in the forest. It's very, very active.
Oh, nice.
And so we've planted two blueberry plants in the front yard. This is their second year. The first year we've gotten fruit, and this year they have been flowering and we have fruit on it, but they're directly in the ground. We did not put any sulfur or acidifier. It's just straight into our forest floor compost with filtered water. One thing we really try to make people aware of is to put a filter on their
Mm-hmm.
garden hose that take out all the chlorine.
Chlorine. Yeah.
Yes, and that really helps a lot. We do occasionally scatter coffee ground around it when we
Mm-hmm.
make coffee, but other than that, we were just testing it out, without doing too much. Like I said before, I don't want to give too much input. I just want them to kind of show me what they like.
Yeah.
And so far those two bushes are loving it in the front yard. And
Fantastic. In the
yeah,
ground. Wow.
in
How
the
cool is
ground.
that? How cool is that? Usually we have to grow them in pots here.
Yes. And
But
I kill everything in pots.
yeah. Boy, I heard that. Pots are a different game, that's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to start shifting a little bit here on you, and I want to talk about your Facebook page. You have a Facebook page for Epic Yard Farm, yes?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I started the Facebook page as a way to journal and share my progress with
Uh-huh.
friends and family.
Oh, nice.
And it just slowly grew through the community, gardening community,
Mm-hmm.
and word of mouth. We actually have, in the short 2-year time frame, now about 1,200 followers
Wow.
on there, and that also gives me a platform to share my experiment, to share the success and failures,
Mm-hmm.
trading notes, trading recipes, and I started organizing tours on there. Um, so it's a really good platform to share and communicate with other gardeners.
Nice. So you're on Facebook, and it's Epic Yard Farm.
Yes.
Before we actually move away from this and go to the next section, I drove by your house one day recently, and you have this epic gate. Tell us about your gate and how'd that happen?
So when we were replacing the old fence that came with the house,
Right.
and we decided we want to put a model. My husband and I live by this model of being not afraid to do what you want to do. And the model that's welded and put on the gate is be epic, make it happen. And
Nice.
actually, when we visited you in one of your classes,
Mm-hmm.
you encourage people, if we are sharing our produce with family or friends,
Uh-huh.
we should have a name for our garden.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
And the big epic on our gate seemed to be appropriate. So we just call it Epic Yard Farm using that.
Fantastic. Good job. So can you talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it?
I have failed many, many times, but I think one failure I had in the beginning of my gardening journey is kind of a good example for other gardeners to learn from. Is I had one corner in the backyard. When we first bought the house, the backyard was completely hardscape because of the big dive-in pool we had.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we started gardening in the front yard. But in that back corner, there was a little corner that the homeowner left with some dirt. It looked like gardening mix in there. But there was no plants in there. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start planting. And that looked like a perfect spot. So I went and bought a fig tree. I put it in. And the next day, all the leaves start crisping up.
Oh, interesting.
And start dropping. So I jump online, post pictures, ask lots of questions, and some people say, "Oh, do you have fruit on there?" I say, "Yes, it's filled with fruit." They say, "You got to remove all the fruit," and then I do that, and then a month later, all the leaves turn yellow, and all the leaves start dropping again. And I was in despair. I was like, okay, I just have black thumb. I'm cursed with black thumb. and then I found out actually I was planting in the wrong time of the year because it was in the middle of June.
Oh my gosh.
I was going into July. And also that corner is joined by 2 block walls facing west.
Oh my gosh.
So that corner is basically an oven during the summertime. So from that experience, I learned that I have spent the next year observing the sun path.
Oh yes.
And also learning all about microclimates and how to create microclimates. And that's also when I learned about moringa trees, how well they do in the heat. And then I learned to plant the seed of a moringa in that corner. And also lemongrass is another one that can take the heat in the summertime.
Yeah.
So once I've planted those 2, everything behind them, being protected by them, do really, really well. So that is my failure and learning experience from that.
Perfect. What do you consider your biggest success?
I think my biggest success so far is I'm killing a little less plant than I used to.
Love it. Fantastic. And what drives you? What's your big why? Why do you find yourself doing this?
I think it's because I love nature. I remember growing up, my mom take us into the mountains, and I love watching the animals, the bugs and the plants, and being able to have that set up in my own backyard. You know, I can sit in the garden and just watch things take place. You know, when the pests show up, the beneficial insects will come up and start taking care of business for me. You know, just watching, setting up a system that they can just kind of, you watch the circle of life happening right in front of you, in the little space that you allow it to happen in this urban jungle is what really drives me. And I want everybody to have that in their home, in a home garden.
Nice. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there any book or documentary that you've seen or read that, you know, is really influential for you in your life?
So the 2 films that really influenced me, one of them is by PBS, called What Plants Talk About. Oh. And that one is very, very interesting because it talks about the mycorrhiza, that internet within the plants, and it talks about the plant is able to quickly switch their biology to adapt.
Interesting.
And things like that is just very, very interesting. It open up, you know, all kinds of possibilities of, you're not just planting something, you're planting something that is very aware of its surroundings.
Right.
And if you can communicate by observing, figuring out what the plant likes, I think, you know, everybody can be successful in planting, because you're kind of, it's not a one-way street. You're back and forth kind of dialogue with your plants.
Great. That was one. What was the other one?
And the other one was the Back to Eden film that I mentioned before, because the farmer Paul, he is partially handicapped, and the way he garden is very easy. He does plant in rows, but his idea of using the wood chips, and he also is the one that inspired me to try growing things that has different pH requirements right next to each other.
Oh yeah.
Because the microbes will help the plants out, and provide them what they need.
Perfect.
So those are the two films that really had guided me through these 3 years.
What one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
I think you have to be very open and very relaxed and know it's all trial and error. So every time you fail, it's don't look at it as a failure. You have to look at it as a success because you tried it and then now you learned from it. So that applies both to gardening and in life. And I think
no kidding.
just having an open mind will help a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Jacq. It's been a treat getting to chat with you.
Thank you, Greg.
How can our listeners get a hold of you?
The best way to reach me is to message me or post comments on my Facebook page at Epic Yard Farm.
Perfect. Very good. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Did you know that building healthy soil is the key to successfully growing your own food? Check out my new free video series where you will learn everything you need to know about building thick, rich soil, including the 5 essential components that make it up, how to create your own lasagna garden and why you would want to, and as an added bonus, a video on creating an almost instant garden for under $100. Plus, you'll get a healthy dose of my goofiness. Go to healthysoilhacked.com now to sign up for your free video series. Your plants will thank you. Remember, that's healthysoilhacked.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.